Welcome everybody to another episode of vBrownBag. This is vBrownBag EMEA. We are very proud today to feature Johan van Amersfoort and Marco van Baggum, who are going to be talking about the VDI Design Guide. I hope I didn't butcher your names too much. This is going to be an interview kind of presentation, but first of all, I have some quick notes that I have to get out of the way for every time we do a podcast. These are our handles. We have shows in the US, Latin America, Brazil, EMEA. Everything uses the hashtag vBrownBag. Those are the times, and I am your host, Ariel Sanchez. So let's see the proper pronunciation of your names as I bring up your Twitter handles and Twitter profiles. So I'll let Johan go first.
Yeah, so that's Johan van Amersfoort. So you came really close, to be honest.
Cool. And Marco.
So my name is Marco van Baggum.
I was probably I was farther away on that one.
Oh, that's okay.
Because of the G.
I heard worse.
Okay, so today I'm super excited because Johan reached out that he has been working, Johan, Marco, and others have been working on a new book that is coming out, which is the VDI Design Guide. And I found this blog post, and we said this is going to be interview style. So please go ahead, tell me about the book and everything you want to go. I can definitely click on this if you want, and I can scroll as you're talking about it.
Yeah, so, the whole idea of the book came up about a year ago, just before VMworld. Frank Denneman and Niels Haaghoort released the host resources deep dive, and I got a couple of questions from people in the community and other people around, why doesn't a book like that exist for virtual desktop infrastructures and VMware VDIs in general, or in particular? And so that was where the idea came. And back then I was also mentoring a couple of guys on their VCDX, and the idea was born because I wanted to create a book that was all about designing VDIs based on how you would do that in a 2018 standard. So including stuff like Windows 10, graphical processing units, so GPUs, and what you can see here in the screen. So that's an example of one of the diagrams. But also stuff like NSX, which is, in my opinion, essential to how you would design a VDI with security in mind, but also with high availability. And that's why I did my VCDX on desktop and mobility, but knowing everything in what is in scope for a VDI it's a lot. So that's why I asked for two contributors, one being Sean Massey, and the other one being Marco. And Marco specifically because he has an extensive knowledge of data centers and NSX. And so there you have it. You have 3 VCDXs working on the book, and some other guys like Ray Heffer and Simon Long who've been VCDXs at VMware for quite some time now, all working together with us on the book to make it basically a great success. And it's almost there.
Very, very cool. And I just went through my VCP7 DTM, and one of the things that was amazing to me was that the blueprint has not changed in years. Mirage was still in there. There was a bunch of products that were no longer relevant, but in the field, I actually have to work with customers who are doing stuff like NVIDIA Grade and they really want to know what's the best thing to do right now, not, years ago when the first documents came out. So I think this is very, very welcome. Not only because it's recent and relevant, but also because of the people that are doing it. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and Marco probably could elaborate on this, but everything you do nowadays is with security in mind, and that's why I asked both Marco and Sean, who have a lot of experience with security as well, to work with me on the book, because security is essential to a successful VDI part of the design.
And Marco,
Yeah, so
tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for me, when Jan came to me with a question, if I could help him with some of the security questions for the VDI design guide, I jumped right on it, because I knew that the two products for VMware Horizon and, for example, NSX could really help each other to improve the security for a VDI platform. And that's why we really try to explain how NSX can help secure the desktop environment, not just by deploying it and this is how it is. No, this is how you can leverage the NSX security components to get a more secure platform.
Yeah, and we're not telling in the book how an end user should put which enable which setting on which place to leverage a certain feature. We're just asking tons of questions and sharing a lot of experiences we had in the field. And basically, the book has two goals. So first being to help everyone to design a VDI and start with asking yourself the question, why would you do that? Because to be honest, the VDI is legacy. It's just that. If you look at the product portfolio of VMware, they're focusing a lot on Workspace ONE. So that's modern management with an app store. So modern management from the AirWatch side, and an app store portal with a lot of security-related features on the other side. And that's great and all, but that's great for modern applications like SaaS or cloud-based applications, and applications that were purposely built for, let's say, an iPad, stuff like that. But one of the questions, you saw the tweet, a couple of tweets around with Pulse, and what I did on the, there's actually one that's interesting. There's a question around about when do you think you will be moving away from all your traditional applications or legacy applications? And the majority answered when hell freezes over, and that's why you still need a VDI.
Yeah. Well, I've heard of like healthcare customers that they're still running, very old apps. So, it actually is a problem for them as things run out of support, because now they have to go into these expensive projects to finally, they're finally forced to upgrade, and they're not quick projects, right? So it requires a lot of planning and a lot of testing.
Absolutely, and it's not just one application. If it's just one application, it's possibly like home build and you would be able to invest in migrating that specific application towards something from the cloud. I would do that, but it's not just one traditional application. It's tons of them, and so you need a proper infrastructure to be able to deploy, to deliver applications in a secure and manageable way, with lifecycle management in your in the back of your head. And so that was like the one part. Start with the question, why would you do this? Create a business case. So the book helps you create a business case. And one of VMware's top-notch business case specialists, Brian Gamage, he helped us with the book in terms of we did quite an extensive interview in which he makes you start thinking about, you know, what should be incorporated in a business case and how would you approach something like that. And then it starts explaining how the whole VCDX way of approaching a design works. So, you know, we start with goals and requirements. And from that, we'll hop over to an assessment, assessing your current workplace. And step for step, we'll explain how to approach those phases and what to do in those phases. So, for instance, in terms of an assessment, I really like to work with Liquidware's Stratosphere UX because it's simple and it will tell you everything you need to know about the different use cases you have, but also maybe, you know, current bottlenecks in the environment, or stuff like concurrency, or you know, it helps you create some sort of an expectation around performance or around the number of applications that you need to land, stuff like that. And from that moment on, we start explaining every part of the architecture and what kind of considerations you would you might have before you take a decision in something. And you know, an example of that is DR. If you're talking about DR in a Horizon environment, 9 out of 10 customers will try to deploy a secondary data center and enable cloud-based architecture. But I am not really sure. Oh, that's the poll question I was mentioning. So 62% of everyone who answered the poll thinks that they won't leave legacy apps in anytime soon.
And I'm surprised because this is the first time that I checked this account. You have put a lot of polls out there and for a long time. And this is really, really good feedback that you're getting here. Yeah, and some of them were surprised me, to be honest. So that was one that surprised me, but also like, you're in VDI, so you know what's the hardest part in second day operations when you talk about VDI? Oof, well, training people, managing change.
Well, that's it, managing change. So, you know, in Windows 7 era, if something changed in an environment, you would rebuild a base image, and you would probably do that like once in every 6 months, right? That's it. Maybe even once a year or once a couple of years. But now with Windows 10 being released every 6 months, a new version, and applications being refreshed every, let's say, couple of being updated every couple of weeks, you'll have a challenge. And so one of the things I've asked, and I think it's a bit more recent, is how people are currently building their base images, and if they do that manually or automated. And yeah, that's the one. So 64% does it fully manually, 26% partially automated, and just 28% fully automated. Imagine how many errors or mistakes you could make if you do this like 100 times. You build 100 different or rebuild 100 different base images you're sure to make mistakes. Making mistakes is human. So because of this, we focused more on the automation part in the design in the book as well, and I highly advise customers to do this because it'll save you time in the long run, and rebuilding images by hand is error prone, and you definitely want to avoid that.
Well, and I don't think, would you say there's a lot of resources today out there so for people to learn this, to learn how to build automated images and manage the process, for day 2 and day 200?
I would say there are because Microsoft has some extensive documentation on how to build it, and using System Center or a Microsoft Deployment Toolkit has been a best practice in building physical machines and servers for many years. So there's a lot of documentation around that specific, but on Windows 10, it's becoming more and more. So there was somewhat less documentation around that.
Yeah.
And in the book, we're not exactly describing every single step, but we're more guiding an architect or a consultant in why you should automate and how you should do it. So use some kind of different tools that they're on the market, and more from that angle.
Yeah, and it's also so very important sometimes to have someone tell you this is the path that you want to take. Go read this, and those are the really important ones. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what we also tried to do with the book, and then as NSX part is a great example of that, is what you'll do, because the second goal for the book is to help more people become a VCDX. And so we completely described the whole process of becoming a VCDX in terms of a design structure. The thing I found that was challenging, and that might be less challenging in a DCV perspective, is that there isn't a lot of documentation available of the DTM design in general. So yes, there is some stuff around. There's a lot of stuff around vCenter and of vSphere, vSAN. But there's not really a lot of documentation available on those combinations and on design best practices. So we kind of gathered all kinds of bits and pieces together and made it one big story to help more people becoming a VCDX on especially desktop and mobility, because we're only with 16 as of today.
I was going to mention, and you have it here in your web page, EUC champions. They're a really exclusive bunch. I mean, there's a lot of VCPs, but as soon as you get into the desktop part, the VCP DTM goes way low and VCAPs go way low. VCDX DTMs are few. So having your resource that is dedicated to DTM will definitely help a lot of people just get much, much better at understanding the whole complex project, and making sure that they have a methodology.
Yeah.
Because I think the foundation book that John Rashid put out, it had one DTM example, but I think that was the only thing available, and it's always better to have more examples.
Yeah, and I actually have the book right now in my hand. It's a great resource for VCDXs in general. I think, Marco, you have one as well, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
it's a really good book that really helps you with getting on through the whole VCDX methodology.
but it doesn't have a strong focus on either the VDI side of things or NSX. So that was the other goal: get more PCDXs and help them with all kinds of situations or functionality or solutions you might come across in your VDI projects, including, like you're seeing on the screen right now, graphical acceleration.
I was gonna say these diagrams that I've seen mentioned, they're very different and they're very nice.
Yeah. So one of the things that you need to be able to do as PCDX is use a whiteboard, and I always had the idea of creating like whiteboard images, but I have an OCD. So if you create whiteboard images but boxes aren't really all the same, that wouldn't work in my head. So I found a Visio stencil that lets you create kind of the whiteboard style, and with a kind of a handwriting with it, and I absolutely love them.
No, I have to agree that they're very, very cool. So go ahead and tell me more. NSX, you mentioned it. I know full well that this is the future. You can have so much more flexibility in how you apply policies. Where do you see that traditional EUC administrators have the most problems with NSX, and maybe tell us about how you're dealing with that in your book?
So one of the big challenges is, for example, firewalls. So applying policies not based on IP addresses only and TCP ports, you can create real policy based security groups. So instead of just saying this IP address can go to that IP address, we can create a security group. For example, we have a financial group that needs to get to the financial app. So every desktop that's being deployed gets a tag, that tag's being added to the security group, and the security group has access to a specific app, for example, financial. So that way it makes the lives of the EUC administrators really, really easy. Just apply the tags based on names, based on VMs, based on all different kinds of objects within NSX.
Yep, very cool. And
yeah, and it's more, that before NSX, you would need, for instance, third-party load balancers in order to create a high available VDI solution. But what we describe in the book is that you could easily leverage the power of the NSX load balancer in multiple ways. And maybe Marco could elaborate some more about that.
Yeah, so it's not only for the workloads, the desktop workloads, but it could also be for the complete Horizon or EUC stack. You can utilize a load balancer for getting high availability for the Horizon stack. We can use the security framework to make sure the whole management plane will be secured, and for example, leverage different kinds of security insertions like antivirus or deep packet inspection, all different kinds of security measures. So it's not only applying a security framework, but it's also the whole networking part, the whole network virtualization part, where we can leverage all the different features of NSX to make one standardized platform.
Yep, very cool. And I think you also, I saw some polls talking about the NSX features like offloading AV through the hypervisor. I'm imagining that I remember when it was vShield, it became part of NSX Manager. I imagine that space is also changing all the time.
Yeah, you see different security vendors working together with VMware to create a complete landscape around all kinds of security features. So I think VMware announced some kind of security, how did they call it? Like, a bond of different kind of vendors. Some offering like SIEM solutions, other offering like forensics and modern AV or traditional AV. And with all these different kind of vendors and different kind of solutions, you'll be able to create a highly secure solution in which the user, won't be able to. They'll be able to work in a normal fashion and have a normal user experience, but they'll do everything with security in mind. Yep. Without even noticing it, and I think that's the biggest power of NSX. So in case you have a malware threat on a single desktop, but because of microsegmentation, the east-west traffic is disabled. One of the solutions will could detect there's malware and could place a security tag on a desktop. Within maybe a second, everything is excluded from the network, so no harm can be done. And I think that's where one of the biggest value adds of NSX on a VDI platform is.
Right, and I've seen those demos, and they're really amazing. Where you don't need an administrator to do anything. It detects an infection, and it immediately says, "This VDI instance will not talk to anything else until this is corrected." And I think that's a big draw, because you can't do that without NSX, basically.
True.
Correct. Yep.
So tell me, one thing that I mentioned that I'm super excited about is getting a good introduction to Grid, because so far I'm completely a newbie. And one of the things that I saw in one of your polls is which brands are you using with VDI, and it's really mostly NVIDIA. So tell me a little about how that market has evolved in the last years.
Yeah, sure.
It's super interesting, right? And it's but I always see people saying you should use this protocol instead of this protocol for maximum fidelity. And I know that they keep pushing the product to make it better, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so I think back in 2012, NVIDIA created the first grid card, the infamous K1 and K2 cards, which we still see at customers nowadays. And the whole idea of those cards was that there are certain workloads, like designer workloads, maybe like stockbrokers that need a lot of displays. You have certain workloads that need some graphical accelerated power in their virtual desktop. So back just before these grid cards were released, we did that basically with VDGA, so a feature that lets you directly port or attach a physical GPU to a single virtual machine. That was quite popular back then, but as density is a challenge, because you can only link a single GPU to a single desktop, NVIDIA came with the grid cards, which lets you share the frame buffer, so the physical graphics memory on a card, and divide it under different desktops, and share the GPU that's on the card and the cores that's on those cards amongst different desktops as well. So you'll have a fixed set of video memory allocated to a desktop, and the physical GPU will be shared amongst different virtual desktops. Compared completely like how a CPU and RAM memory is used by multiple virtual machines. So they did that as well. Back then, I think on a single card, you could easily have like 32 or 16 simple use cases working with some of the physical memory. But density became a challenge. And a couple of years ago, NVIDIA created a card called the M10, and I'm guessing most of the people that do something with VDI still deploy them. And that was a card that was able to have 64 users on a single card with Windows 7. With Windows 7, it wasn't really necessary to have a GPU, except for if you have certain use cases, certain applications that require graphical acceleration. But unfortunately, since Windows 10 came out, everything changed. Windows 10 expects a GPU in your system. And if there isn't a GPU, your CPU will emulate one. And thus, the CPU will be... Sorry?
No, that's terrible, because obviously it will consume more CPU.
That's it. It will consume more CPU. It'll consume more RAM. And that's NVIDIA dove into that space because Windows 10 will absolutely work without the GPU, and you can even have like a bigger density on a host without a GPU. But as soon as the demands of a user increase in terms of, I want 60 frame video, or I want 4K monitors. I would like to call with Skype for Business on my Chromebook. Stuff like that is absolutely possible, but you don't want to do that without any graphical acceleration in your hosts, because you will hammer them on from a CPU perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is quite a change for people that were thinking that they would use the same hardware going from Windows 7 to Windows 10. I'm detecting it's not at all, and they should really buy your book.
Correct. Yeah, and there's two types of migrations towards GPU that you have to separate. So customers working with somewhat older generation of CPUs in their hosts, everything that's like generation 4, like a V4 and older, those CPUs aren't really purposely built to do a lot of GPU emulation, and so migrating from Windows 7 to Windows 10 on such a platform almost requires GPUs. On the somewhat newer platforms like the Intel Gold Xeon Gold CPUs, especially the powerful ones, it might be somewhat different, but it always depends on your use cases, and it also depends on the expectations of the end user. So if an end user is only using 20 frames a second, isn't expecting video, isn't working with a lot of WebGL applications, for instance, it will absolutely work without a GPU. But as soon as the user will do more extensive stuff, and especially WebGL applications are a challenge, you won't make them happy without a GPU.
Yep. Now, one thing that I was seeing here is that, first of all, it's you like you said, the community for the VCD XDTM is very small, but at that level, they are very close. Everybody knows each other. Everybody helps each other out. Talk to me about how writing this book was for you, and collaborating with Marco. And Marco, you can also chime in, because I know you also helped with other books. Most recently, the resources guide that Frank Denneman and Niels Haggard have released. So please tell me a little about the experience of writing the book.
So for me, as the contributor to the book of Johan, I got a certain topic that I could really write about. For Johan, it's much more difficult to talk about every single topic. For me, I could really focus on a specific topic. It's the same for reviewing a part of the book of Frank and Niels. I had to review one single chapter, so I can really focus on that. So I really have much respect for the guys that wrote the whole book to touch every single topic that her book is containing. So for me, I have the easy part, so I can just browse through it and see where some things could be changed or improved, and that makes my life a little bit easier. And this for me was the first time that I really wrote a chapter for a book. So for me it was really interesting to see how Johan wrote the whole book, in which person, which words did he use, because you really want to use the same language, and that was quite difficult to align that. Mm-hmm. So I really at utmost respect for Frank and Niels, who wrote like a big book together in the same form.
Yep, I can totally feel that. And what about you, Johan? I mean, I can see here, I mean, this post is not written yesterday, so it has been more than a year of working and thinking about and trying to limit or contain what exactly the book is going to be about. And I bet there was lots of times that you said, well, I also want to include this, so should I or shouldn't I?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So the main reason why I started all the different polls on the Twitter account was to help the community give me like an angle in some parts, and also help create the content of the book. So one of the first things I wanted to include in the book is, for instance, how to let's say a migration scenario from Windows 7 to Windows 10, because that might be one of the scenarios you'll be coming across. But there wasn't like a lot of popularity around that specific topic, but more, for instance, around graphical acceleration or NSX. And so, as the time went by, I changed the direction of the book a little bit, and tried to find the subjects that really fit a VDI based on the 2018 standards. And I think that succeeded. The one thing that's basically really challenging, because I asked a couple of guys to contribute, Marco and Sean, and some other guys to help me, do reviews. The hard thing of completely writing a book by yourself is that you need to keep focused for a year. And the other day I listened to the Virtually Speaking podcast, which featured Frank Denneman and Duncan, and they also mentioned it. It's so hard to keep focus on such a project, and of all people that tell you that they're going to write a book, like one in every 20 is actually going to finish it. And I just wanted to do it. I just wanted to finish it, and preferably before VMworld US.
Yeah.
And that's going to work out. So that specific thing, I'm really proud. And to have people around me, such as Marco and Sean, who Simon Long, for instance, guys that ask you questions about not really why you did what you did, but more challenge you in certain things. Take vSAN, for instance. A best practice for vSAN is to have multiple disk groups. But that wasn't in the first version of the vSAN section I did. So by getting challenged on such topics and on stuff like, how big should the flash part of a vSAN data store be, or of a disk group, sorry. Such parts being challenged by other VCDXs, other people who know how to challenge that's really helpful. And that's what made the book a really complete guide to becoming a VCDX.
Yeah, and I think the thing that is really cool in the book is that Johan also put like considerations into the book. So it's not only like text, but it's also, did you think of this? Or if you made this choice, beware of this, this, and this. So it's not like one set of rules. No, it's also, did you think of this? Helping people to think about their solution. And I think that is a really cool feature.
And Ariel, you mentioned the connection protocols as well. You know, BLAST versus PCI over IP.
Yeah.
So one of the most common things we or I hear at least in at customers or at the community is that PCI over IP is dead. BLAST Extreme is the protocol to work on because VMware isn't developing on PCI over IP anymore. Well, that's not true, because why isn't VMware developing on PCI over IP? It's because PCI over IP itself is a great connection protocol. It has a complete feature set, and it's logic for VMware to develop on BLAST Extreme to get a feature parity, because on certain parts, BLAST Extreme does behave better than PCI over IP, but you know, from a graphical user experience, to be honest, nothing beats PCI over IP.
Yeah, and I've heard that too when I was talking with a customer that doing this NVIDIA Grid, that the next version of BLAST will have full 4K color resolution, whereas PCI IP already has it today. So it's still a thing where BLAST Extreme is not 100% there, right? And probably by VMworld time, we will get more news on that.
Yeah, and according to the VMware website, currently BLAST Extreme in Horizon 7.5 has a feature parity to PCI over IP, and that I think that's more from an extensibility perspective, and also, you know, the number of channels and the features in the channels, that is pretty much comparable. But yeah, more from a graphical experience, user experience. Yeah, again, nothing beats PCI over IP.
And one other thing that I was going to comment on is you have, I think I hear, you started mentioning some of the things that, you know, security, like you said, is top of mind for everybody. TPS is now disabled by default, and I see that everybody's like, well, listen, TPS is really cool and really useful in VDI. Yes, it's a security risk, but everybody uses it in practice. So tell me a little about those trade-offs, right?
So
because
that's pretty funny. So we have like a WhatsApp chat group with Marco, with Niels and Frank, and Rutger Kosters, who's a VCDX as well, and a couple other guys. And so the other day, I asked another question around TPS, not from a security perspective, because from a security perspective, I don't think it is, the risk is big enough for an architect to not use it. The chance of a password, for instance, being hacked through TPS is so small. It's so unlikely to happen. That's, you know, it's a worthless risk.
I've always heard that if someone is able to do it, then they probably have control over all your environment anyways.
Yeah, and I heard someone else saying that the chances of winning a lottery and like winning $1 million is higher of you being able to pose a security threat by leveraging TPS. So that's one. But on the other hand, TPS is a great benefit if you would like to leverage. No, if you would like to have a bigger density on a host, a bigger density of desktops.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, VMware changed the page size from 4K to 2 MB, and when that changed, TPS didn't have like a big advantage because the memory page, identical memory pages of 2 MB are not really that easy to find, I would say. So you are still able to enable small pages, 4K pages, and that's where the benefit of TPS comes into play, especially when using instant clones. Enabling TPS, I see customer deployments easily saving 30% of RAM memory because TPS is enabled, and I think that's a really powerful thing.
Yep. So yeah, that's the beauty of the VCDX methodology, is that you're always considering what's the alternatives and what am I gaining and what am I losing with every decision, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and to add to that, to the TPS part, what we see nowadays is that in terms of performance and especially with GPUs, people or consultants are more and more enabling memory reservations on desktops, which if you reserve your RAM memory for 100%, TPS could still be enabled, but it makes it useless because you're not gonna size for over provisioning. You're gonna size for performance and have a more conservative sizing on your platform. And that's those considerations are what the book is all about.
Very, very cool. All right, so we had some live colleagues join us. I see Eric Kubla, Hans Krashveld, probably butcher his name, Jim Jones. If you have any question and you want me to open up the microphone, take advantage, go ahead and give me any kind of signal, raise your hand. I have Eric. All right. Eric, you should be live now. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. Good stuff.
Hi,
I actually had a question. You kind of touched on it at the end. So I have a Horizon 632 environment running all Windows 7 desktops, and I'm moving to Horizon 7. Now, when we first put Horizon in back in, I don't know, I think it was a 4. Version, it was kind of one of those things where it was, hey, here's this, check it out. And while I was checking it out, they said, okay, we're going to start using it. So it's set up pretty, I don't know, sloppy maybe. My thought was I'm just going to build I don't have that many desktops, probably in the 200 range. So it's not that bad. I was going to rebuild the entire environment, from scratch, desktops and all. I mean, any recommendations? Should I do that? Should I migrate them? What do you think would be the best?
Well, are you going to migrate towards Windows 10 as well?
Yes.
Yeah. So you have to completely rebuild your base image, anyways, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so in terms of architecture, are you already using the UAGs, or I think they're still called access points in 6.3? Or are you using security servers?
No, we use VPN. So
VPN, really? Okay, cool.
So internal, it would just be connecting to the connection server. If anybody's external to the company, then we connect to our VPN, and that VPN tunnel only has access to the connection server internally.
Right. Well, I think I think the easiest way to approach this would be upgrading your Horizon connection service towards 7, because the upgrade itself is fairly easy. Are you using a View Composer or a different method of cloning?
Yeah, View Composer.
Right. So the Composer is still in Horizon 7 as well. Although no one is actually claiming at VMware that the link clone will disappear. My estimation would be that it's gonna happen one way or the other. So upgrading it seems legit. Just creating a new pool and add a new base image in that pool could definitely work. But it all has, if you have enough resources to do that, I would go that way. If you have a greenfield environment ready, anyways, Why not rebuild it?
Yeah, and that's the route I started to take. So I already deployed the Horizon 7 connection server and and Composer, and kind of already started with it. But I only did one pull and moved a couple VMs in it. I mean, I've been using it; it works, but I just didn't know about migrating. I want to get off. We're in the middle of a Windows 10 migration anyhow, so I thought this would be a good time.
Yeah, cool.
Sounds good. Well, Eric, you have their webpage and their Twitter handle, so I bet you can update us on how that goes as it goes.
I do. I've already bookmarked the page.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, I don't see hands or Jim raising any hands, so I'll give the floor to you guys, to Marco and Johan. Anything, your last comments, anything you want everybody else to know about the book. And
yeah, so
I think you said we're going to see it in VMworld, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, most definitely. So you can expect it in the Amazon bookstore within a couple of weeks. Somewhere around the first week of August, and I'll definitely be at VMworld. I'll bring some books and some other cool stuff with the book around the book with me. Marco will be there as well, and yeah, just come to say hi. We're
yeah, just
happy
stop
to,
us and come over.
Yeah, absolutely. We won't bite.
and you're very very easy to find, both of you. You just have to look for the really smiley guy here, and the really bearded guy over here.
Yeah.
No, but
I need to update my photo as well.
Yeah, Mark, you have to look for two bearded, tall Dutch giants. So we're the V giants.
There you go. Or just follow this face over here.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope that you get a chance to, to have those book features where they have the VMware Press and they sit down the author hours. If you don't find the contact for that, I'm pretty sure I can find you that contact. So let me know if I can help you there. And,
yeah, we'll make that work.
Yep, and I'm looking forward to reading the book as well. Thank you again for scheduling this time with us to tell us about this. Every especially by being able to release it by VMworld time is such a good thing, because there's so many people in the world out there that they only get to kind of relax and look at how things have changed in VMworld. So being able to take this book home, or hearing about it from other people saying, hey, new book release, you should really see it. It's all fresh for 2018. This is the things that people take back home, and they are able to work with this source for the rest of the year. So I really appreciate it, and I know the V community appreciates it too.
Cool. Well, thanks for having us. We met last year for the first time at VMworld. We had a blast, and let's drink some beers at VMworld 2018.
There you go. All right. With that,
Yes, you do.
Yeah. With that, we'll stop the recording, and I really appreciate everybody that came in. Jim says thank you, and I thank you as well. And this will be in YouTube very soon. So bye, everybody.